The rain outside never seemed to stop that month. It made everything look gray, quiet, and lonely, just like Claire Dawson's heart. 6 months had passed since her divorce, but her house in Portland still carried traces of her old life. The framed photos she hadn't taken down, the faint scent of Ethan's cologne on an old sweater, the coffee mugs they once picked together. Everything whispered memories she wished would fade. Her mornings had become a routine of silence. Coffee, news she barely watched, then long stretches of time filled with thoughts she didn't want. Everyone believed Claire was doing fine, that she had moved on gracefully. But inside, she felt hollow, like she was living inside the echo of a life that no longer fit her. Her ex-husband, Ethan, wasn't cruel or heartless. Their marriage hadn't ended in a storm. It had ended in silence. Over time, they had grown into two strangers sharing the same house. Love faded quietly, replaced by politeness and distance. He wanted to chase new things. She wanted to find peace. One day, they both realized that staying together was only keeping them both from starting again. But starting again wasn't as easy as everyone made it sound. Claire wasn't 20 anymore. She didn't want chaos or passion. She wanted comfort, understanding, and something real. What she didn't expect was to find any of that in Liam Hayes, Ethan's best friend. Liam had been around since the beginning. He was there at their wedding, laughing in every photo, the friend who always offered to help with repairs or lend a hand. He had been the safe one, the steady one, the person who never made a scene but always showed up when needed. After the divorce, when Ethan moved to Seattle for work, Liam stayed in town. At first, it was just a friendly thing. He'd check in now and then, ask if she needed help with something around the house. It didn't feel strange. After all, he'd always been around. One afternoon, when her garden fence broke during a storm, Liam showed up with tools before she even asked. "Can't let you handle this alone," he said with a small grin. It was a simple line, but it carried warmth, the kind she hadn't felt in a long time. They worked together in easy silence, talking about everything except the past. She noticed the way he listened, not the distracted kind of listening Ethan had done near the end, but the kind that made her feel like her words mattered. When the fence was fixed, Liam stayed for coffee. They sat by the window, rain tapping softly against the glass. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. She told him about her new job at the library, the quiet joy of reading again, the small steps she was taking to rebuild her life. He listened, smiled, and told her she was stronger than she realized. That night, after he left, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in months: calm. From then on, he became a quiet presence in her life. Not every day, not too often, just enough to remind her that she wasn't alone. He'd help with errands, bring her groceries, or simply sit with her on the porch. It was never about romance. It was about two people who understood loneliness and found comfort in each other's company. But feelings have a way of sneaking in through the smallest cracks. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Liam helped her fix the lights on her porch. They worked close, their shoulders brushing now and then. When the lights flickered on, she smiled, and for a second, he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. The warmth in his eyes made her heart race, and that terrified her. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying that moment again and again, scolding herself for feeling something she shouldn't. He was Ethan's best friend. The line between them wasn't written in words, but it was there, invisible yet strong. The next time he came over, she tried to act normal. But everything felt different. His smile lingered a little longer, her laughter came a little easier, and silence between them no longer felt empty. When he left, he hugged her, a simple, friendly hug, but his warmth stayed long after the door closed. She leaned against the door, heart racing, whispering, "Don't do this, Claire." Days passed, and she kept finding excuses to see him. A broken faucet, a leaky roof, even asking for help setting up her Wi-Fi again. He never questioned it. He just showed up. It wasn't about needing help. It was about needing him around. One Saturday, They went to a small cafe downtown. She told him she hadn't been out much since the divorce. He smiled and said, "Then it's about time you start again." They talked for hours, about movies, dreams, the places they wanted to see. For the first time, Claire laughed without forcing it. It felt natural, real. Still, she fought it. Every time she caught herself thinking about him, she reminded herself who he was. Her ex-husband's best friend. It was wrong, wasn't it? Or maybe not wrong, just complicated. But her heart didn't care about rules or history. It only cared about how safe it felt when Liam was around. That evening, when Liam dropped her home, the sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink. He stood by his truck, hands in his pockets, looking hesitant. "Claire," he said softly, "you don't have to be alone, you know." She looked at him, unsure how to respond. "I'm not," she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded, his gaze gentle but deep. "Good, I want you to know that." He left soon after, and she stood on the porch, the wind brushing her hair, her heart beating fast. She didn't know where things were going, but something inside her told her that her story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. That night, she sat by the window again, rain starting to fall. But this time the silence didn't feel so heavy. She smiled faintly, realizing that sometimes the people we least expect become the ones who quietly mend what's broken inside us. She didn't know what the future held, or what Ethan would think if he found out. All she knew was that for the first time in a long while, she wasn't looking back. She was simply feeling alive again. And though she didn't say it out loud, she knew something had already changed. Liam Hayes wasn't just a friend anymore. He was the beginning of something she couldn't yet define, something gentle, real, and dangerous in its own quiet way. As she turned off the lights and walked upstairs, she whispered to herself, "You can't choose who stays in your heart. But maybe, just maybe, you can choose who helps it beat again." And with that thought, she smiled in the dark, unaware that the story she thought had ended was only about to begin. The days after that quiet evening felt different for Claire. She told herself nothing had changed, but deep down she knew better. Every time Liam's name appeared on her phone, her heart reacted before her mind could remind her to be careful. Their friendship had become her calm after the storm, but the calm was starting to stir something new, something she didn't know how to control. One Sunday morning, Claire was at the local farmer's market picking fresh flowers when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You always pick the white lilies," Liam said, his smile easy, his eyes kind. She turned, surprised but secretly glad. "They make the house smell alive," she replied. They walked together through the rows of stalls, laughing over silly things, sharing stories about their week. It was so natural, so warm, that people passing by might have thought they were a couple. When he carried her groceries to the car, she noticed how close they were standing. For a second, she forgot to breathe. She wanted to say something, maybe thank him, maybe tell him how much his presence meant, but she didn't. Instead, she just smiled and drove home, her thoughts louder than the radio. Later that evening, Liam texted her, "Thanks for today. I didn't realize how much I missed just being around you." She read it 3 times, her hands trembling slightly before replying with a simple, "Me too." That message changed everything. It didn't say much, but it said enough. After that, they talked more often, short calls, late-night messages, and small moments that grew into something unspoken but powerful. One rainy afternoon, he stopped by her house again. No tools this time. Just 2 cups of coffee and that same easy smile. "You looked like you needed company," he said. She wanted to deny it, but truthfully, she had been sitting alone for hours, staring at the gray sky, lost in thoughts she didn't want to face. They sat on the couch, watching the rain streak down the windows. The house felt warmer with him in it. "Do you ever think about starting over?" Claire asked quietly. Liam looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Every day," he said. "But I keep telling myself it's too late." "It's never too late," she whispered. He smiled, but there was something in his eyes. Hesitation, maybe fear. She wanted to ask what he was thinking, but before she could, her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. He was coming back to town for the weekend. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't seen her ex-husband since the divorce papers were signed. Their last words were polite but distant. The idea of seeing him again made her heart race in a way that wasn't love. It was old discomfort returning to life. Liam noticed the change in her expression. "Everything okay?" he asked. She nodded quickly. "Yeah, just Ethan. He's visiting for a few days." The silence that followed was thick. Liam nodded slowly, setting down his cup. "Then I should probably give you some space." She wanted to stop him, to say she didn't need space from him, but she couldn't find the words. When he left, the house felt emptier than it ever had before. The next evening, Ethan arrived. He looked older, a little worn out, but still had that calm charm that once made her fall for him. They sat at the kitchen table, catching up like old friends. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't easy either. "You look good, Claire," he said softly. "Happier, maybe," she smiled politely. "I'm getting there." He hesitated before asking, "You've been seeing anyone?" The question hit harder than she expected. "No," she said quickly, though the image of Liam flashed in her mind. Ethan nodded, almost relieved. "I'm glad you're okay. I just wanted to make sure we're still good." That night after Ethan left, Claire felt restless. She sat in the living room, her heart full of thoughts she couldn't sort. Without thinking, she picked up her phone and called Liam. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" he asked, his voice warm, grounding. "I just needed to hear your voice," she said quietly. There was a pause on the line, the kind that carried more emotion than words could hold. "I'm here," he replied softly. The next morning, Liam came by with coffee again. They sat together, not saying much, just sharing the silence. After a while, he said, "I don't want to make things harder for you, Claire. I know Ethan's my friend, and I don't want to cross a line that shouldn't be crossed." She looked at him, eyes tired but honest. "Liam, that line doesn't even exist anymore. My marriage ended a long time ago. You didn't ruin anything." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Still, I don't want to be the reason someone gets hurt." "You're not," she said softly. "You're the reason I'm healing." The truth hung between them, quiet and undeniable. For a long time, they just sat there, the morning sun spilling across the table. A few days later, Ethan stopped by unexpectedly. He'd left something behind years ago, a box of old photos. As Claire helped him carry it to his car, Liam pulled into the driveway. The air froze for a moment. Ethan turned, smiling politely. "Liam, been a while." Liam nodded, his voice calm. "Yeah, how have you been?" Claire could feel the tension, not angry but awkward, heavy with things unsaid. Ethan looked at her, then back at Liam. "You two seem close." Her heart skipped. Before she could respond, Liam said gently, "Just making sure she's doing okay. That's all." Ethan gave a short nod and drove off. The silence that followed felt endless. Claire turned to Liam. "You didn't have to explain," she said quietly. "I know," he said. "But I also know how it must look." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I don't care how it looks. I care about how it feels." He looked at her then. Really looked. And for a moment, all the fear, guilt, and hesitation faded. What remained was something fragile but real. "Then tell me," he said softly, "how does it feel?" Claire swallowed hard. "Like I'm finally waking up after years of pretending to be okay." That night, neither of them spoke again, but they both knew something had shifted forever. The unspoken line between friendship and something deeper had been crossed. Not with words, not with touch, but with truth. As she stood at her window later, watching the moonlight spill across the garden, Claire thought about how life sometimes circles back in unexpected ways. Love doesn't always arrive where you expect it. Sometimes it grows quietly, patiently, right beside the pieces of what once was. And though she didn't say it aloud, she knew the truth. She couldn't go back. Not to who she was, not to what she'd lost. Liam wasn't her ex-husband's best friend anymore. He was the man who had found her when she didn't even know she was lost. She closed her eyes and smiled faintly, realizing that maybe, just maybe, this was what starting over was supposed to feel like. Terrifying. Tender and beautifully uncertain, weeks passed, and life moved quietly around Claire and Liam. But between them, everything had changed. They didn't need to say it. It showed in every glance, every pause between words. What once was friendship had turned into something deeper, something neither of them had planned for but couldn't ignore. Claire began to see Liam in ways she hadn't before. The way he laughed, the way he listened, the calm he brought into her restless days, it all felt like home. Yet every time she let herself drift closer, guilt would rise inside her, not because she did anything wrong, but because life had tied their paths together through Ethan. It was a quiet, invisible line neither of them could fully erase. One evening, Liam stopped by after work. He looked tired, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his expression thoughtful. "Can I come in?" he asked. Claire nodded. They sat at the kitchen table, a place that had seen more honest moments between them than anywhere else. "I ran into Ethan today," Liam said finally. Claire's stomach tightened. "Oh?" He asked if we were seeing each other. Liam looked at her, eyes uncertain. "I didn't know what to say." Claire froze. "What did you tell him?" "That it's complicated," he said quietly. "Because it is." Silence filled the room. She wanted to say something, anything, but her thoughts were a blur. Ethan's name still had weight, even though their story had ended long ago. After a moment, she said softly, "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." Liam shook his head. "Don't be. I just don't like feeling like we're doing something wrong when all we've done is care." Claire looked at him, her voice low. "Sometimes caring feels like the hardest thing to justify." He nodded slowly, then stood. "I'll give you some space, Claire. Maybe it's better if—" "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't walk away again." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "I've lost too much already." "Don't make me lose this too," Liam stopped. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he sighed, pulling out the chair again. "Okay," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." The next few days were quiet, filled with small but meaningful moments. They cooked dinner together, took evening walks, and shared laughter that came easily. For the first time in years, Claire felt light again, but peace never lasts long. A week later, Ethan showed up at her door. He looked different, calm but serious. "We need to talk," he said. She let him in, unsure what was coming. They sat in the living room where so many old memories lived. Ethan glanced around, then met her eyes. "I've known about you and Liam for a while," he said. "You don't have to hide it." Claire's heart skipped. "Ethan, it's not—" He raised a hand. "You don't owe me an explanation." We both moved on. "I just wanted you to hear it from me. I'm okay with it." She blinked, surprised. "You are?" He nodded. "It hurt at first. But then I realized, you deserve someone who sees you. Maybe I never did." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. There was no anger in his voice, only truth. "Thank you," she said finally. "That means more than you know." After he left, Claire sat in silence, tears she didn't expect rolling down her cheeks. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. The ghosts of her past had finally stopped haunting her. That evening, she told Liam what happened. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. "He really said that?" "Yes," she said. "He doesn't hate us. He actually wished me well." Liam smiled faintly. "Then maybe the hardest part is over." But it wasn't. Even with Ethan's blessing, life had its own way of testing them. Rumors started spreading, neighbors whispering, people assuming things they didn't understand. Claire tried to ignore it, but some nights, it got to her. "People think I moved on too fast," she said one evening. "They think you were always waiting for me." Liam frowned. "Let them think what they want. We know the truth." "I wish it were that simple," she whispered. He reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "It is. We didn't plan this, Claire. But we can't live for everyone else's approval." His words steadied her heart. Slowly, she began to realize that love isn't about timing or permission. It's about peace. And for the first time, she had found that peace with him. One afternoon, they went to the lake, the same place Liam used to visit with Ethan years ago. The air smelled of rain and pine, the water calm and still. They sat on the wooden dock, their feet brushing the cool surface. Liam glanced at her. You ever think about how strange life is? How we end up where we never expected to be? All the time, she said. But I've stopped trying to make sense of it. Maybe it's not supposed to make sense. Maybe it's just supposed to feel right. He smiled, the corners of his eyes soft. Does this feel right to you? She looked out at the water, the sunlight glinting off the ripples. It does, she said. More than anything has in years. He took a deep breath, then whispered, Then that's enough for me. From that day on, they stopped hiding. They didn't announce their relationship, didn't defend it. They just lived it. Quietly, honestly, with kindness. People eventually stopped talking, and those who didn't no longer mattered. Claire's world began to bloom again. She started painting, something she hadn't done since her divorce. Liam helped her turn the spare room into a small art studio. You should show people your work, he said one day. You've got a gift, she smiled shyly. You really think so? I know so. His encouragement gave her courage. Within months, she held a small exhibition at a local cafe. The night of the event, as people admired her art, she saw Liam standing at the back of the room, smiling proudly. In that moment, she realized how far she'd come, from heartbreak to healing, from silence to self-worth. When the night ended, they walked home together. The city lights shimmered above them, and the world felt peaceful again. Thank you, she said softly, for not giving up on me. Liam looked at her, his voice steady and warm. You were never something to give up on, Claire. You were someone to believe in. Her heart swelled with quiet joy. They didn't need promises or grand gestures. What they had was simple. Trust, kindness, and the rare kind of love that grows from friendship, not fire. As they reached her porch, she turned to him and smiled. You know what's strange? She said. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of tomorrow. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. That's because tomorrow finally belongs to you. The night air was cool, the stars stretching across the sky like a promise. And for the first time in years, Claire didn't feel like she was surviving. She was living, fully, freely, and with the man who taught her that love could be gentle. It wasn't a perfect story, but it was real. And sometimes, that's all love needs to be. Months passed, and life began to find its rhythm again. Claire and Liam's days were simple. Coffee in the morning, quiet dinners, and long walks through their small town where the air always smelled like pine and rain. The heaviness that once shadowed their lives had faded, replaced by something peaceful and real. They didn't talk much about the past anymore. It had already said everything it needed to. Now, their story was about the present, and the slow, steady building of something that felt like home. Claire's art career had begun to grow. The small exhibition she'd held opened doors she hadn't expected. A local gallery offered to display her work, and for the first time she allowed herself to dream again. Liam was always there, not as a hero, but as her quiet supporter. He'd help her load paintings into his truck, hang canvases on gallery walls, and make sure she never doubted herself again. One evening, after a gallery event, they sat by the lake where so much between them had changed months ago. The air was crisp, the surface of the water reflecting the fading light. Liam leaned back on the bench, his eyes following the horizon. You ever think about what's next? He asked. Claire smiled faintly. Every day. But for once, I don't feel like I have to control it. I just want to live it, he nodded. That's good. You deserve a calm life, Claire. She looked at him, her voice soft. You're part of that calm, you know. He smiled, that quiet, gentle smile that had become her favorite thing about him. Then I'll stay as long as you'll have me. Their connection was never loud or dramatic. It was built on the small things, trust, laughter, late-night talks, and understanding without words. Sometimes they'd argue. Sometimes they'd misunderstand each other. But they always came back to the same truth. They didn't want to lose what they'd found. But even peace has its moments of doubt. One afternoon, while Claire was at the cafe downtown, she overheard two women whispering near the counter. Isn't that her? One said. The one who used to be married to Ethan? Now she's with his best friend? The other woman lowered her voice, but Claire still caught it. I guess some people move on quickly. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they carried the tone of judgment she'd worked so hard to ignore. Claire finished her coffee and left without saying a word. The walk home felt longer than usual. When she got back, Liam was on the porch fixing the railing. He looked up when he saw her expression. What's wrong? She shook her head. Nothing, but her voice cracked slightly. He put down his tools and came closer. Claire, talk to me, she sighed, sitting down on the steps. It's just people. They still talk. They still see me as someone who did something wrong. I thought I stopped caring, but sometimes it still gets to me. Liam sat beside her. You know what I've learned? People always have something to say, especially about things they don't understand. But you can't build your life on their opinions. I know, she said quietly, but it's hard when you've spent years trying to be the good one. He reached for her hand. You are the good one. You just started choosing yourself, and that's what they don't understand. She looked at him then, tears glimmering in her eyes. You always know what to say, he smiled softly. That's because I've spent years learning how to listen to you. It was moments like that, simple, honest, and pure, that reminded Claire how rare their bond was. Liam didn't try to fix her. He stood beside her while she fixed herself, and that was love in its truest form. As autumn arrived, their days grew cozier. The house they shared slowly became a reflection of them both. His books stacked near her easel, her paintings brightening the once empty walls. They spent quiet evenings cooking together, the sound of rain tapping the windows, soft music playing in the background. There was no rush, no performance, just two souls who had finally found peace in each other's company. One stormy night, much like the one that had first changed everything between them, the power went out. They lit candles and sat near the fireplace, the orange glow flickering across the room. Liam leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Funny, isn't it? The first time it stormed like this, everything started to change. Claire smiled, her eyes reflecting the light. And I was so scared back then. I didn't know what my life was becoming, he chuckled softly. And now? Now I'm grateful. For the storm, for the mess, for all of it. It led me here. The wind howled outside, but inside everything felt still. Liam looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them. Not just love, but peace, understanding, and the quiet promise of forever. Claire, he said after a long silence, I know we didn't plan this. I know it came out of a strange, painful place, but I can't imagine my life without you now. She blinked, surprised by the emotion in his voice. What are you saying? He smiled faintly. I'm saying I love you, and not because I'm supposed to, or because you needed saving. I love you because you make everything make sense. Her heart swelled, and tears blurred her vision. Liam, he shook his head gently. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. But she did. I love you too, she whispered. You came into my life when everything was falling apart, and somehow you helped me build something better. You made me believe again. He reached for her hand, and they sat there in the quiet warmth of the storm. Two people who had been broken by life, finding comfort in the pieces they put back together. The next morning, the world outside was calm. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed and new. Claire stood by the window, watching the sunlight stretch across the yard. Liam came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her gently. You know, she said softly. For a long time, I thought my story ended with heartbreak. But it didn't. It just took a turn I never saw coming. He kissed her hair. Sometimes the best stories do. That day they went into town together. People greeted them kindly now. Maybe because time had softened their judgments, or maybe because love has a way of speaking for itself. Whatever it was, Claire no longer felt the weight of the whispers. In the evening, she painted again. A picture of a calm lake after a storm, light breaking through the clouds. Liam stood behind her, watching quietly. What will you call it? He asked. She smiled. Maybe. After the rain, he nodded. It's perfect. And it was. Because their love wasn't loud or dramatic. It was real. The kind that grows quietly in the corners of ordinary days. It wasn't about fixing the past, but building something honest in its place. Years later, when people looked at them, they didn't see a scandal or a story of what once was. They saw two people who found love where no one expected it, and made it last. And every time the rain fell, Claire would smile, remembering that one stormy night when everything changed. Not for worse, but for good.